So a little while ago, I made an Awesomenauts video, and by my channel standards, it's doing really well. And because it's done so well compared to all my other stuff, it means that I got a lot more engagement than I usually would, and by extension of that, I got a whole lot more comments. And they were all greatly appreciated, obviously, but it raised a lot of discussion about the topic, because there was some disagreement, and there was some agreement. And I thought it was worth revisiting briefly to talk about some of the things brought up. If you haven't watched the Awesomenauts case study, then this video won't make too much sense to you, so you should go do that first. There's a link in the sidebar. So first off, I just want to address something that I just straight up got wrong in the first video in a really frustrating way. Towards the beginning of the video, I said, but League of Legends has the third dimension to work with. If Ziggs throws a minefield in front of you, most of the time you can just walk around it. It's only really powerful when it's used in a choke point like this. This just isn't true. Yes, you can walk around Ziggs mines, that part is true, but League of Legends does not actually have the third dimension to work with. League of Legends has 3D art assets, but it's still a two-dimensional game. League of Legends doesn't let you move vertically up and down. Any champion that has an ability that looks like they're jumping is just moving their hitbox across the ground underneath them. The game takes place entirely on this 2D plane. I was super frustrated at myself after releasing the video, because I totally knew that League of Legends was 2D, and I still somehow didn't catch myself from saying it was 3D in the hours and hours I spent making the video. What I should have actually said is that Awesomenauts and League of Legends are two-dimensional in different ways. Whereas Awesomenauts loses depth, the ability to walk forwards and backwards, League of Legends loses the ability to travel vertically up and down. They're both two-dimensional, just in different ways. I do think that what I said still stands. The obnoxious and oppressive effects of area denial in Awesomenauts are made worse than they would be in a traditional MOBA. But it's not because traditional MOBAs are 3D, because they aren't 3D. It's because in Awesomenauts, you can only move left and right without being affected by gravity. If something is placed directly in front of you, you have to jump over it. Jumping over abilities like a sentry black hole is a lot harder than walking around a Ziggs minefield, because the effect gravity has on your character while jumping makes attempting to pass such a large area denial tool very difficult. Another thing that got pointed out to me quite a lot was that a lot of the things I brought up were only really issues in solo queue on the ranked ladder. In competitive play, a lot of the things I talked about aren't as big of an issue. Instead, completely different issues emerged. For anyone who doesn't know, the competitive system for Nauts did have a community-made pick and ban system, alleviating one of the major problems that I mentioned with Nauts as a whole. Not only that, but the perma-push potential of characters like Lone Star wasn't such a big problem in a coordinated team. In a solo queue environment, the turbo shove in Lone Star is extremely difficult to stop, but in a game where all 6 players are in a Discord call to each other, they can definitely prevent that fairly easily. And while this is true, I still do think that Lone Star demanding such high levels of attention is extremely powerful in and of itself, but it becomes manageable in a coordinated team. But I don't think this really means it isn't a problem. Sure, high level players who are on comms with each other can deal with the issue, but the overwhelming majority of players aren't high level, and they certainly aren't in a Discord call with all of their teammates all the time. Balancing a game for the highest levels of play works most of the time, the logic being that if the best players in the world can't find a way to break something, then the plebs at the bottom of the ladder can't find a way to do it either. But this isn't a perfect design philosophy, so when we have immense pub stomp characters like Leon and Lone Star that are close to unstoppable without team coordination and without a pick and ban phase, those characters are still objectively a problem that needs addressing, regardless of how minimal their impact on the top 0.5% of players' games is. Devs should balance around the highest levels of play, I agree, but if something is heinously oppressive in every other level of play, that still needs to be addressed, regardless of if the pros care about that particular character or not. A lot of people also pointed out that I didn't mention certain overpowered characters like Dizzy or Snork. These characters weren't mentioned for a very simple reason. I've barely played them. By the time they were released, I wasn't really active in the game's community at all. I think I played with or against a Dizzy twice before I stopped playing, and I've never seen a Snork in game. I'd heard from the community that these characters were completely bonkers, but I didn't want to use other people's talking points to make those arguments, because I have no personal experience with them whatsoever. From what I've heard, they're both basically just insta-kill machines that have pretty much no startup frames on any of their animations, meaning that it's really hard to react to their combos that they can insta-kill you with. These characters, and probably a few more, deserved spots in the video. But I didn't really have time to talk about everything I wanted to talk about, and I didn't necessarily have enough experience to talk about certain things in particular anyway. Leaving out characters like Dizzy and Snork is much better than getting everything wrong about them, so I just left it. Something that I did cut from the video that I actually wished I'd mentioned was the ranked ladder itself, because it's quite badly implemented. The ranked ladder in Awesomenauts was just a leaderboard, and your rank was based on where you stood on the leaderboard. The top 250 players are in Division 1. The rest of the divisions below it are based on a percentage of the player base. The more players there are, the more players there are in Division 2, for example. There is no non-ranked matchmaking mode. There's custom games, and there's brawls, but these aren't the standard game. If you want to play the standard base game, you have to be setting foot on the ranked ladder. The leaderboard is a bit of a weird way of doing this, but it's not inherently flawed. Having the leaderboard dictate your rank is fine. But the problem was that there was no MMR system. MMR stands for Matchmaking Rating. Essentially, it's a unique number that's hidden from the player that remembers your rank. Your outward-facing rank will still just say Division 2 and then a number on the leaderboard, but an MMR system would remember a much more complex and specific version of your rank and your skill level, and it would try and put you into games that were as balanced as possible based on your matchmaking rating. Not having an MMR system is a pretty big problem for new players, because when the leaderboard resets every few months, all of the players' ranks have suddenly disappeared, and they're all being thrown into the same matchmaking pool. The former Div 1 players are now in Div 6 games, destroying everyone, and the Division 6 players who installed the game 15 minutes ago doesn't understand what's happening or why they're getting destroyed. Having an MMR system would completely fix this, because the game would remember that the Division 1 players used to be Division 1, so it would put them in games with other Division 1 players. Not having a non-ranked mode means that these Division 6 players that are getting destroyed can't even try and avoid ranked mode at the beginning of the season, because there's no non-ranked mode. They have to step into ranked. I do understand why Awesomenauts doesn't have a non-ranked system. They don't want to separate the player base. Having a non-ranked mode and a ranked mode would mean that half the players play non-ranked constantly, and half the players play ranked constantly, and the player base isn't big enough to support that, so it would make match queue times really, really long. But unfortunately, not having a non-ranked mode has unfortunate side effects for the lower level players, especially around the league reset time. Well, seems like I've looked down my checklist and that should be everything. It's probably not everything though, is it? While I'm sure there's still going to be disagreement with this video, I appreciate the engagement and interaction that I had on my other Awesomenauts video. It was nice to see that so many people still play this game and are still so passionate about it. And I am and always was a bit of a scrub at the game, so my perspective on it is that of a solo queue player. But it was nice to see the pro players come out and tell me their side of the story. If I missed anything, do make sure to let me know. Thanks for watching.